A young woman helped an elderly woman at the airport, unaware that her son was looking for love. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzed overhead as Kelly Nadine Ellis hurried through Terminal B, her worn leather messenger bag bouncing against her hip. Her natural curls, usually styled with care, were hastily secured in a practical bun, and dark circles lurked beneath her honey-colored eyes, partially hidden by thin-framed glasses. Another delayed flight, another missed connection, and her residency round started in less than 6 hours. Gate B23, B23, she muttered, scanning the endless stream of travelers. The holiday rush had transformed the airport into a maze of rolling suitcases and frustrated passengers. Kelly's tennis shoes squeaked against the polished floor as she navigated through the crowd, her cardigan providing little warmth against the aggressive air conditioning. 27 years of life had taught her that nothing came easy. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Baby, you've got to work twice as hard to get half as far." The mantra had driven her through med school, through endless nights of study, through every door that seemed determined to close in her face. Now, as a pediatric resident, she lived those words every day, carrying them like a shield. The overhead speakers crackled. Final boarding call for Flight 2187 to Charlotte. Kelly quickened her pace, but something caught her eye. An elderly woman stood near the information board, her silver hair disheveled, hands trembling as she squinted at her boarding pass. Despite the urgency of her own situation, Kelly felt that familiar tug, the one that had led her to medicine in the first place. "Ma'am," Kelly approached, her voice gentle. "Are you having trouble finding your gate?" The woman turned, relief washing over her face. "Oh dear, yes, these boards. They keep changing, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm Kelly. Let me help you with that." She took a closer look at the woman's boarding pass. Margot Rivers, headed to Savannah, Kelly's hometown. "You're an angel," Margot breathed, her southern accent thick with gratitude. "My son always tells me I should use one of those smartphone apps, but—" She shook her head, a shadow crossing her face. "Since my Harold passed, I've been trying to do things my own way. Stubborn old woman, I suppose." Kelly guided Margot toward her correct gate, listening as the older woman spoke about her late husband, her son Ricardo, and her granddaughter Sophie. There was something in the way Margot's voice softened when mentioning them, love mixed with worry. "My son, he's raising Sophie alone now," Margot confided, clutching her purse. "Such a good father, but he carries so much on his shoulders. The medical bills alone." She paused, then smiled apologetically. "Listen to me, dumping my family troubles on a stranger. Sometimes strangers are the best listeners," Kelly replied, thinking of her own parents back in Savannah, her father's endless bus routes, her mother's dedication to her students, all to give their daughter a chance at her dreams. They reached Margot's gate just as boarding began. The older woman grabbed Kelly's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you, dear. What did you say your name was again?" "Kelly. Kelly Ellis." "Kelly Ellis," Margot repeated, as if memorizing a precious detail. "You know, sometimes angels come in the most ordinary moments. My Ricardo could use someone like you in his life." Kelly felt her cheeks warm. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." "No, dear, not everyone stops. Not everyone sees." Margot's eyes twinkled. "You're special." "I can tell." As Kelly watched Margot board her flight, she glanced at her watch and suppressed a groan. Her own gate was at the opposite end of the terminal. She'd definitely miss her connection now, which meant another night of minimal sleep before rounds. Yet somehow she couldn't regret stopping. Her mother's voice whispered again in her mind, but this time with a different lesson. "Sometimes, baby, the detours are where life's sweetest moments hide." Kelly adjusted her bag and headed toward her gate, unaware that this simple act of kindness had set in motion events that would change not just her life, but the lives of a father and daughter she had yet to meet. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors of Atlanta's busiest airport, destiny had just taken an unexpected turn. The night ahead would be long, and tomorrow's rounds would be brutal. But for now, Kelly allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes the best medicine wasn't found in textbooks or hospital corridors. Sometimes it was found in simple moments of human connection, in the quiet spaces between the rush and chaos of everyday life. As she finally reached her gate, Kelly pulled out her phone to email her chief resident about her delay. The screen reflected her tired face, and she saw what Margot had seen, not just exhaustion, but kindness. Maybe that's what her mother had meant about working twice as hard. Maybe it wasn't just about achievement, but about maintaining your humanity in a world that often seemed designed to strip it away. The gate agent announced another delay, and Kelly settled into an uncomfortable airport chair, her mind drifting to the stories Margot had shared. Somewhere out there, a father was raising his daughter alone, fighting battles she could only imagine. For a moment she wondered about them, these strangers connected by a chance encounter in an airport. Little did she know, her name was already being carried home to them, wrapped in the warmth of a grandmother's hope and the possibilities that lay ahead. Ricardo Rivers stared at the stack of bills on his kitchen counter, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the worn linoleum. His daughter's insulin supplies for the month, 847s. The new educational materials for his community center programs, $235. The repairs for the aging HVAC system in their modest rental, still pending. He ran a hand through his dark hair, the hint of grey at his temples betraying stress beyond his 31 years. "Daddy?" Sophie's voice pulled him from his calculations. She stood in the doorway of their small kitchen, her blue-framed glasses slightly askew on her nose, wearing her favorite pajamas covered in cartoon dinosaurs. "Can we have pancakes?" Ricardo's expression softened immediately. "Hey, princess!" He quickly shuffled the bills into a drawer. "Pancakes, huh? Let's check your sugar first, okay?" Sophie nodded, already holding out her finger with practiced patience. Her brown curls bounced as she hopped onto her designated kitchen chair, the one with the booster seat and the cushion she'd decorated herself with stickers of stars and rockets. Ricardo grabbed her testing kit, his movements automatic after 3 years of this morning routine. "Ready? 1, 2. He pricked her finger gently, and Sophie barely flinched. "That's my brave girl." While they waited for the reading, Sophie chattered about her dreams. And then the dragon turned into a butterfly, but it was still big enough to ride on. "And we flew to the moon for ice cream." "Ice cream on the moon. Sounds pretty amazing." Ricardo checked the meter. 125. "Perfect range, sweetie. Looks like pancakes are a go." As he mixed the batter, Ricardo glanced at the refrigerator door where Sophie's latest drawing hung, a crayon masterpiece of what she called their perfect day. He featured prominently in blue stick-figure form, holding hands with a smaller purple figure, Sophie, both surrounded by hearts and stars. There was a third figure too, one Sophie had started adding to her drawings lately, a space she said was for someone special when we find her. The microwave clock read 6:47 a.m. They had precisely 43 minutes before they needed to leave. Sophie for kindergarten, him for the community center where he coordinated educational programs. His mother Margot usually helped with morning drop-off, but she'd been visiting family in Atlanta for the past few days. Can we put blueberries in them?" Sophie asked, now perched on her knees in her chair, watching him cook. Would a dragon butterfly rider want anything less? He sprinkled blueberries into the cooking pancakes, making a mental note to pick up more groceries. The fruit was getting expensive, but Sophie needed her fresh produce. He'd skip his own lunch again today to make it work. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Just landed. The most wonderful thing happened at the airport. Can't wait to tell you, call me later." Ricardo smiled, tucking the phone away. His mother's wonderful things usually involved chatting with strangers. Since losing his father last year, she'd been trying to push herself to be more social, to embrace life again. He couldn't blame her. Grief was a familiar companion in their household. The memories of Lisa, his late wife, still lingered in these morning moments. She'd been the pancake expert, the one who could make them in shapes of animals and flowers. Sophie had been too young when Lisa passed to remember those details, but Ricardo kept them alive in quiet ways. "Daddy, you're doing the sad smile again," Sophie observed, her green eyes, so like his own, studying him intently. "Just thinking happy thoughts, princess." He flipped the pancakes with extra flair, making her giggle. "Find about how lucky I am to have the world's best pancake taste tester." After breakfast, the morning routine continued its careful choreography. Blood sugar check again. Insulin dose calculated and administered. Sophie's backpack packed with her testing kit, emergency glucose tablets, and the medical information card he updated weekly. His own bag filled with program proposals and grant applications he'd work on during his lunch break. "Ready for adventure?" he asked, helping Sophie with her light jacket. The Atlanta spring was warming up, but mornings still carried a chill. "Ready," she twirled, her backpack covered in glow-in-the-dark constellations spinning with her. "Daddy, can we go to the farmer's market this weekend, Mrs.? Andrew said they have face painting." The farmer's market, another expense. But Sophie's face lit up at the mention, and he found himself nodding. "We'll see how the weather looks, okay?" He'd figure something out. Maybe he could pick up some extra hours at the center. As they walked to the car, Sophie's small hand in his, their neighbor Mrs. Henderson waved from her porch. "Ricardo, don't forget the neighborhood association meeting tonight." He waved back, suppressing a sigh. Another commitment, another evening of juggling childcare. His mother usually watched Sophie during these meetings, but she'd be jet-lagged from her trip. "Mrs. Henderson has a new cat," Sophie informed him as he buckled her into her car seat. "It's orange and white and sits in the window. I named it Rocket because it looks like it could fly to space." Ricardo checked the car seat straps one more time. Always one more time. "That's a perfect name, sweetheart." He kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Ready for countdown. 10, 9, 8. Sophie began their daily ritual, counting down as he started the car. 7, 6, 5. "Daddy, do you think Rocket the cat has a best friend?" "I'm sure he does, Princess. Everyone needs a best friend," she declared, with the certainty only a 5-year-old could muster. "Faster than you, Daddy." The comment hit him harder than it should have. When had his daughter become so perceptive? "I have you, don't I? My best friend in the whole universe." Sophie beamed but shook her head. "That's different. You need a grown-up best friend, like in my drawings." Ricardo pulled out of their driveway, careful to avoid the pothole that always seemed to grow larger with each rain. "So life's pretty good just the way it is, Sophie Bug." But as they drove through their neighborhood, past the small houses with their postage-stamp lawns and the community center where he spent his days helping other families find their footing, Ricardo couldn't help but feel the weight of Sophie's words, the empty space in their life that he'd grown so accustomed to carrying, like the constant awareness of Sophie's medical needs or the careful balance of their budget. His phone buzzed again in the cup holder. Another message from his mother. "Called the center. Left something important with Denise at the front desk for you. Promise you'll check today? Love you both." At the stoplight, Ricardo glanced in the rearview mirror. Sophie had pulled out her sketch pad, already lost in another world of her own creation. She was humming softly, the theme song from her favorite space cartoon, completely unaware of how her simple observation about best friends had cracked open something in her father's heart. The light turned green, and Ricardo drove on, unaware that across town, a tired pediatric resident was finally ending her overnight shift. Her thoughts occasionally drifting to the kind elderly woman she'd met in the airport and the son who carried the world on his shoulders. Kelly Ellis moved through the pediatric ward of Atlanta Metropolitan Hospital with practiced efficiency, her white coat pockets stuffed with the essentials, stethoscope, protein bars, and an assortment of colorful stickers. She'd managed 3 hours of sleep after her airport ordeal, but the hospital's industrial-strength coffee was keeping her upright. Barely. "Dr. Ellis," a small voice called out as she passed room 412. Inside, 6-year-old Marcus waved from his bed, his arm careful of the IV line. "Look what I drew." Kelly detoured into the room, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Let me see this masterpiece." She studied the crayon drawing of what appeared to be herself wearing a cape. "Is that me as a superhero?" "Yeah, because you made the scary needle not hurt yesterday." Marcus beamed, revealing a gap where his front teeth used to be. "Our mom said you have magic hands." Kelly winked at Marcus's mother, who was dozing in the visitor's chair. "The real superhero is you, being so brave with those tests." She pulled a rocket ship sticker from her pocket and added it to his chart. "Speaking of which, ready to check your vitals." As she recorded Marcus's improving numbers, Kelly's mind drifted to the grandmother from the airport, Margot, and her mention of medical bills. How many families like Marcus's struggled with the financial burden of keeping their children healthy? The thought followed her as she continued her rounds. At the nurse's station, her colleague and friend Natalie handed her another chart. "Heads up, new admission in 415. 5-year-old with type 1 diabetes. Severe hypoglycemic episode." Kelly's heart tightened. Pediatric diabetes cases always hit hard, reminding her of her own cousin who'd been diagnosed as a teen. "Parents?" "Single dad. He's been managing her care, but their regular endocrinologist retired last month. They've been struggling to find a new one who takes their insurance." Natalie lowered her voice. Dad looks like he hasn't slept in days. I'll head there now. Kelly grabbed her tablet, quickly reviewing the patient's history. Every detail mattered when treating chronic conditions. Room 415 held a tiny patient with familiar-looking curls, but Kelly's attention was immediately drawn to the father slumped in the corner chair. His broad shoulders were tense, even in sleep, one hand still clutching a well-worn medical reference book. A colorful friendship bracelet adorned his wrist, clearly child-made, and dark circles underscored his closed eyes. The little girl was awake, quietly coloring in a space-themed activity book. She looked up as Kelly entered, adjusting her blue-framed glasses with a practiced gesture that spoke of long familiarity. "Hi there." Kelly kept her voice soft, mindful of the sleeping father. "I'm Dr. Ellis, but you can call me Kelly if you want. I'm Sophie." The child studied her with startling intensity. "Are you a space doctor?" Kelly smiled, noting the constellations on Sophie's pajamas. "Not quite, but I do know a lot about stars." "Want to hear a secret?" She leaned in conspiratorially. "Doctors use stars to help make people feel better." Sophie's eyes widened. "Really?" "Mm-hmm. See this?" Kelly pulled out her penlight. "This is like a tiny star we use to check how well your eyes follow light. Want to try?" As Kelly performed her examination, she wove the necessary medical checks into a story about a brave astronaut exploring the galaxy. Sophie giggled when the stethoscope touched her chest. "I called like space," she declared. The sound roused her father. He jerked awake, immediately alert. "Sophie, everything okay?" "Daddy, Dr. Kelly knows about space medicine." Kelly turned, medical history questions ready on her lips, but the words died in her throat. The man's green eyes held a warmth she hadn't expected. Despite their exhaustion, something about him seemed familiar. "Mr. Rivers?" She consulted her tablet to hide her momentary pause. "I'm Dr. Ellis. I've been reviewing Sophie's case." "Ricardo," he corrected, running a hand through his disheveled dark hair. "Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep. Sophie's numbers were all over the place last night, and with the insurance changes." He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable admitting their struggles. "No apology needed." Kelly pulled up Sophie's latest readings. "I see you've been keeping detailed logs of her glucose levels. That's incredibly helpful." Ricardo straightened, fully engaged now. "I track everything, meals, activity levels, insulin responses. The spreadsheet's on my phone, if you want to see it." Kelly nodded, impressed by his thoroughness. Many parents took months to develop such comprehensive monitoring systems. As Ricardo pulled up the data, their hands brushed briefly. A small jolt of awareness passed through Kelly, catching her off guard. "Dr. Ellis?" Natalie appeared in the doorway. "The lab results for room 412 are ready. Be right there." Kelly turned back to the Rivers family. "I'll review these numbers and be back soon. Sophie, want to work on drawing a space hospital while I'm gone?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically, already reaching for her crayons. "Can I draw you in it?" "I'd be honored." Kelly smiled, then addressed Ricardo. "Try to get some real rest, Mr. Rivers. Sophie's stable now, and we've got a great team watching her." Outside the room, Kelly leaned against the wall for a moment, taking a deep breath. Something about that family tugged at her heart in an unfamiliar way. Was it just empathy for their situation, or was it the way Ricardo's dedication to his daughter reminded her of her own father's sacrifices? The day progressed in its usual controlled chaos. Kelly checked on Marcus, consulted with 3 other families, and finally found time to eat half a protein bar while reviewing Sophie's detailed medical history. The more she read, the more impressed she became with Ricardo's management of his daughter's condition. Every decision was carefully considered, every treatment adjusted with precise attention to Sophie's responses. During afternoon rounds, she found Sophie teaching her father about space medicine with great enthusiasm. Ricardo played along, his early attention softened by his daughter's joy. The sight made Kelly's heart twist in an unexpected way. "Dr. Kelly," Sophie called out, "I finished the space hospital. Want to see?" The drawing showed a building floating among stars, with 3 figures in the foreground. One was clearly Sophie, another Ricardo, and the third, Kelly felt her cheeks warm. The third figure wore a white coat and held what looked like a star-shaped stethoscope. "That's beautiful, Sophie." Kelly examined the picture carefully. "Is that a shooting star next to the hospital?" "Yep, because shooting stars make wishes come true." Sophie looked at her father. "Right, Daddy?" Ricardo's gaze met Kelly's, something unspoken passing between them. Sometimes they do, Princess." Later, reviewing charts at the nurses' station, Kelly found herself thinking about wishes and shooting stars, about a tired father's gentle hands checking his daughter's glucose levels, about the way Sophie's face lit up talking about space, despite her medical challenges. Earth to Kelly. Natalie waved a hand in front of her face. "Oh, you've been staring at that same page for 5 minutes." Kelly blinked, refocusing on the admission forms. "Sorry, just thinking about the Rivers case. They need a good endocrinologist, someone who'll work with their insurance situation." Natalie's knowing look made Kelly squirm. "And this has nothing to do with those soulful green eyes Mr. Rivers was giving you. I'm their doctor, Nat. For now. They'll be discharged soon." Natalie's smile was gentle. "You know, being professional doesn't mean you have to be alone forever." Kelly thought of the endless nights she'd spent studying, the relationships she'd put on hold for her career, the way her mother worried about her working too hard, living too little. "I'm not alone. I have my patients, my work, and a protein bar for dinner." Natalie pointed to Kelly's half-eaten snack. "When was the last time you did something just for you?" The question lingered as Kelly finished her shift. In the locker room, changing out of her scrubs, she found herself thinking about the airport, about Margot Rivers and her stories of her son and granddaughter. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. They were the same Rivers family. What were the odds? Destiny, her mother would call it. Science, her medical training argued. But as Kelly gathered her things to head home, she couldn't help but wonder if sometimes they were the same thing. Different words for the patterns that brought people together, for the invisible threads that connected lonely hearts across crowded cities. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Baby, you work so hard at healing others. Don't forget to let your own heart heal too. Love you." Kelly smiled, thinking of Sophie's space hospital drawing. Maybe some wishes did come true, not in grand gestures or shooting stars, but in quiet moments between heartbeats, in the gentle recognition of one soul finding another. Margot Rivers sat in her son's modest living room, watching him pack Sophie's backpack for her first day back at school after the hospital stay. The morning sun filtered through worn curtains, casting a warm glow on the medical supplies Ricardo methodically arranged. "You should have called me as soon as she was admitted," Margot said softly, her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. "I would have come straight from the airport." "You needed rest after your trip, Mom." Ricardo double-checked the glucose tablets in the front pocket. "Besides, we had good care." Margot's eyes sparkled. "Yes, about that care. Dr. Ellis seemed quite wonderful." Ricardo's hands stilled for a moment. "She's professional and thorough. Sophie really connected with her. And she's the same Kelly I met at the airport." Margot set down her mug. "You know, sometimes the universe has a way of—" "Mom." Ricardo's tone carried a gentle warning. "She's Sophie's doctor. Was Sophie's doctor," he corrected himself. "That's all." "Is that why you've read her discharge instructions 5 times? Margot nodded toward the papers on the coffee table. "Or why you've been staring at that business card she gave you about the endocrinologist referrals?" Before Ricardo could respond, Sophie bounded into the room, wearing her favorite dress, the one with planets and stars scattered across a deep blue background. Her curls were slightly wild, defying the neat pigtails he'd attempted earlier. "Daddy, can we go to the farmer's market after school, please?" She clutched her latest drawing to her chest. "I made something special I want to bring." Ricardo glanced at his mother, who was already reaching for her purse. "I can handle school pickup," she offered. "You've got that community center meeting anyway." "The market's expensive," Ricardo began, but Sophie's face fell so quickly that he found himself adding, "But maybe we can go for a little while, just to look around." Sophie's smile returned full force. "Yes, and maybe we'll see Dr. Kelly there. She told me she likes farmers' markets." Margot's knowing look made Ricardo busy himself with adjusting Sophie's glasses. "Remember what we talked about, Princess. Dr. Ellis is very busy with her other patients, but she said she goes to the market sometimes." Sophie's voice held the unshakable logic of a 5-year-old. "And I want to give her my picture of the space hospital." She never got to take it home. Across town, Kelly stood in her small apartment kitchen staring at her empty refrigerator. Her long shifts had left little time for grocery shopping, and the wilted lettuce and expired yogurt weren't exactly breakfast material. The farmer's market would be open soon. Fresh produce would be a good start to her rare day off. Her phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Heard the Rivers girl went home yesterday. Dad looked disappointed you weren't on shift for discharge." Kelly ignored the flutter in her stomach and typed back, "Just doing my job. How's she doing?" The response came quickly. Blood sugar stable. Dad called twice to check in. He asked about your market recommendation, BTW. Kelly remembered mentioning the local farmer's market to Sophie during one of their space medicine talks. The girl had been fascinated by Kelly's description of the rainbow chard. Leaves that look like they're from another planet, she'd said. She changed into jeans and a soft green sweater, then caught herself spending extra time on her hair. It's just groceries, she muttered to her reflection, but she still put on her favorite pearl earrings, a graduation gift from her parents. The market was already bustling when Kelly arrived. Morning sun warmed the rows of stalls, the air rich with the scent of fresh bread and early spring flowers. She was examining heirloom tomatoes when a familiar voice cut through the market chatter. "But Daddy, we haven't checked all the stalls yet." Kelly turned to see Sophie Rivers pulling her father by the hand through the crowd. Ricardo looked more rested than he had in the hospital, dressed casually in a blue Henley that brought out the green of his eyes. He was laughing at something Sophie had said, and the sound made Kelly's heart skip. Sophie spotted her first. "Dr. Kelly, look, Daddy, I told you she'd be here. The stars knew." Ricardo's eyes met Kelly's, surprise and something else flickering across his face. "Dr. Kelly, hi. Fancy meeting you here." Kelly smiled, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened. "How are you feeling, Sophie?" "Good. I did all my checks this morning, and Daddy said the numbers were perfect." Sophie bounced on her toes. "And look what I brought you." She thrust a slightly crumpled paper toward Kelly. It was the space hospital drawing, but with additions. Now there were stars everywhere, and a new detail, a small garden next to the floating hospital. "Is that a space garden?" Kelly asked. "Yep, because you said you like fresh vegetables, and astronauts need healthy food too." Sophie beamed. "Do you like it?" "I love it." Kelly's voice was soft. "This is definitely going on my refrigerator." Ricardo cleared his throat. "Sophie, why don't you go look at the flower store with Grandma? Stay where I can see you." Once Sophie skipped off, an awkward silence fell between them. Ricardo spoke first. "I wanted to thank you. Not just for the medical care, but for understanding her, making it all less scary. She's a special kid." Kelly gestured to the tomatoes. "Want some expert advice on picking the best ones? Since you're here anyway." Ricardo's smile was hesitant. "I should warn you, our grocery budget is pretty strict. Then you definitely need my help. My dad taught me all the tricks for finding good deals." She picked up a slightly imperfect tomato. "See this one? They'll sell it cheaper because of the mark, but it's perfectly good inside." They fell into an easy rhythm, moving from stall to stall. Kelly shared her mother's tips for stretching produce through the week, while Ricardo talked about Sophie's favorite vegetables. Neither mentioned how their hands brushed when reaching for the same bell pepper, or how their shoulders touched as they navigated the crowded aisles. At the herb stand, Kelly found herself sharing stories about her residency training. Ricardo listened intently, offering glimpses of his own life, the challenges of running community programs, the joy of helping other families find resources they desperately needed. "That's actually why we're here," he admitted, selecting a bunch of affordable spinach. "The center's starting a healthy cooking program for kids. I'm hoping to learn what kinds of produce might work best." "That's amazing." Kelly watched him carefully count out cash for the purchase. "You know, if you ever need a medical perspective for the program, we couldn't afford to hire." "I wasn't thinking about payment." Their eyes met again, and Kelly felt that same jolt of connection. Sometimes it's about more than money. Before Ricardo could respond, Sophie returned with Margot, clutching a single daisy. "Look what Grandma got me. Can we get one for Dr. Kelly, too?" "Oh, sweetheart, that's not—" Kelly began, but Sophie was already running back to the flower stall. Margot watched her granddaughter go, then turned to Kelly with twinkling eyes. "You know, I had a feeling about you at the airport. Mother's intuition, you might say." "Mom," Ricardo warned, but he was smiling. "What? I'm just saying it's nice to see my airport angel again." Margot patted Kelly's arm. "Size, you should come to dinner sometime. Sophie makes excellent pretend tea." "Mother, actually," Kelly found herself saying, "I'd like that." She pulled out her phone. "Why don't we exchange numbers? For medical follow-up purposes." Ricardo's fingers trembled slightly as he entered his number into her phone. Their eyes met once more, and this time the connection felt like a promise, fragile but full of possibility. Sophie returned with not one but 3 daisies, proudly presenting them to Kelly. "Because 3 is a magic number," she declared, "like 3 wishes, or 3 astronauts in a spaceship, or—" she looked between Kelly and her father, "or 3 people having dinner together." The adults laughed, but there was a current of truth beneath the child's innocent observation. As they said their goodbyes, Kelly clutching her daisies and Sophie's drawing, she felt something shift in her carefully ordered world, like a constellation rearranging itself into a new pattern, equally beautiful but somehow more complete. Later that evening, as Kelly pinned the space hospital drawing to her refrigerator, her phone buzzed with a text from Ricardo. "Sophie wants to know if astronaut doctors like spaghetti. Asking for a friend." Kelly smiled, tracing the stars Sophie had drawn around her figure in the picture. She typed back, "Astronaut doctors love spaghetti, especially with fresh tomatoes." The 3 daisies found their way into a small vase by her window, their simple beauty a reminder that sometimes the best things in life came not from careful planning, but from letting your heart guide you to the right stall in life's marketplace. Kelly stood outside the river's modest single-story home, a recycled paper bag in her arms, filled with fresh ingredients from the market. The porch light cast a warm glow on potted plants and a small chalk drawing that was unmistakably Sophie's work, stars and planets decorating the concrete. Her finger hovered over the doorbell as uncertainty crept in. Was she crossing a professional line? The hospital's ethics guidelines about patient relationships echoed in her mind, but Sophie wasn't her patient anymore. She'd made sure of that, personally arranging the transfer to Dr. Patterson, a skilled endocrinologist who'd agreed to work with their insurance. This was just dinner, just a thank you from a grateful family. The door swung open before she could ring, revealing Sophie in a sparkly apron clearly designed for someone 3 times her size. "Dr. Kelly, I saw you through the window. Did you know we have a telescope? I want to see it." "Sophie," Ricardo's voice carried from inside, "let Dr. Ellis at least come in first." "Just Kelly," she reminded them, stepping into the small but welcoming living room. Textbooks and medical references shared shelf space with children's stories and craft supplies. A wall calendar was covered in carefully noted appointments and glucose readings. Everything spoke of a life organized around love and care. I brought some things for dinner." Kelly held up her bag. "Fresh vegetables for the sauce and garlic bread." Sophie bounced hopefully. "And garlic bread," Kelly confirmed with a smile. "Your dad mentioned it was your favorite." Ricardo emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He'd changed from his work clothes into a soft grey sweater that made his eyes look like sea glass. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I wanted to." Their eyes met, and that now familiar warmth bloomed in Kelly's chest. "Besides, I heard someone's making their famous space spaghetti tonight." "That's me!" Sophie grabbed Kelly's hand. "Come see how we make the sauce look like a nebula." The kitchen was small but organized, with Sophie's medical supplies neatly arranged in a dedicated cabinet. A step stool stood by the counter, clearly Sophie's cooking station. The air was rich with the smell of simmering sauce and something else, possibility maybe, or hope. "First," Ricardo said, "someone needs their evening check." Sophie was already climbing onto her special chair, finger extended. Kelly watched their practiced routine, noting how Ricardo made it feel like a game rather than a medical procedure. "Houston, requesting blood sugar levels for our chief astronaut. Mission control receiving." Sophie giggled as Ricardo checked the reading. "What's our status?" "Commander Dad. All systems normal. Space Cadet Sophie." He recorded the number in a logbook, then turned to Kelly. "Would you like to help with the nebula sauce?" What followed was possibly the most entertaining cooking session Kelly had ever experienced. Sophie directed operations from her step stool, insisting that the vegetables be cut into star shapes for extra space power. Ricardo moved around them both with easy grace, his shoulder occasionally brushing Kelly's as they worked in the confined space. "Daddy makes the best spaghetti," Sophie informed Kelly while carefully tearing basil leaves. "He learned from the Food Channel because—" She paused, something flickering across her young face. "Because cooking together is fun," Ricardo finished smoothly. But Kelly caught the shadow in his eyes. Because his wife was gone, and he had to learn for Sophie's sake. Kelly picked up a piece of carrot. "You know, astronauts have to be excellent cooks. All those experiments with space food." Sophie's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" "In fact," Kelly began explaining how astronauts prepared meals in zero gravity, drawing on half-remembered Discovery Channel specials and quick thinking. Sophie hung on every word, while Ricardo watched them both with an expression that made Kelly's heart flutter. As the sauce simmered, Sophie insisted on giving Kelly the grand tour. "This is Mission Control," she announced, showing off her bedroom. Star charts covered the walls, and a handmade solar system mobile hung from the ceiling. Daddy helped me make it scientifically accurate. Almost accurate, Ricardo corrected from the doorway. Jupiter's a little smaller than it should be. We ran out of papier-mâché. Kelly studied the mobile. The attention to detail is amazing. You even included Pluto. Pluto counts in this house, Sophie declared firmly. Even if it's different, it's still special. The words hung in the air, carrying more weight than the child probably intended. Kelly thought about differences, about a single father learning to cook, about a little girl counting carbohydrates, about a doctor who couldn't seem to keep her professional distance from this family. Dinner was served on mismatched plates with spacecraft stickers decorating the rims. Sophie insisted Kelly sit next to her because astronaut doctors need to stick together. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by Sophie's stories about school and her latest space discoveries. And then Lucas said girls can't be astronauts, Sophie reported, twirling spaghetti expertly. But I told him about Dr. Mae Jemison and how she was a doctor and an astronaut. Right, Dr. Kelly? Absolutely right, Kelly smiled. For there's no limit to what girls can do in space or on Earth. See, Daddy, Dr. Kelly knows. Sophie's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Is that why you're not married? Because you're busy being an astronaut doctor? Sophie, Ricardo began, but Kelly touched his arm gently. It's okay. She turned to Sophie. I'm not married because I haven't found the right co-pilot yet. Someone who understands that helping people is as important as exploring the stars. Ricardo's eyes met hers across the table, and something electric passed between them. Sophie, oblivious to the moment, launched into a detailed plan for converting their backyard into a launch pad. After dinner, while Ricardo checked Sophie's levels one last time before dessert, Kelly found herself studying the family photos on the wall. Most were of Sophie at various ages, but one caught her eye. A younger Ricardo with a woman who had Sophie's curls and bright smile. Lisa, she assumed, the woman whose absence shaped this household in 1,000 tiny ways. That was 3 years ago. Ricardo's voice was soft behind her. Sophie's second birthday. She looked so happy, Kelly said. You all do. We were. He moved to stand beside her. Sometimes I worry that Sophie won't remember her mother at all, that all she'll know is blood sugar checks and insulin pumps. She'll remember love, Kelly turned to face him. It's in everything you do, every star you hang, every meal you cook. That's what matters. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the space between them felt charged with possibility. Then Sophie's voice rang out from the kitchen. Daddy, can we have the special dessert now? The moment broke, but something remained. A warmth, a connection, a silent understanding. They returned to the kitchen where Sophie proudly presented their dessert. Sugar-free jello, arranged to look like galaxies, complete with whipped cream stars. It's beautiful, Kelly said, meaning it. This whole evening was beautiful in its imperfect, honest way. Later, as Kelly prepared to leave, Sophie wrapped her in a fierce hug. Will you come back? We still have to finish planning the backyard rocket ship. Sophie, Ricardo started, but Kelly interrupted gently. I'd love to come back, if that's okay with your dad. Ricardo's smile was soft in the porch light. I think we'd both like that. As Kelly drove home, her car filled with the lingering scent of garlic bread and the sound of Sophie's laughter, she thought about orbits, how planets circle stars, how lives circle each other, how sometimes the gravity of love pulls people together in unexpected ways. Her phone buzzed at a stoplight, a text from Ricardo. Sophie says thanks for believing in Pluto. And thank you for everything else too, Kelly smiled, thinking of mismatched plates and papier-mâché planets, of a father learning to cook and a daughter reaching for the stars, of the way Ricardo's eyes crinkled when he smiled, and how it felt like coming home. She typed back, thank you for dinner, and for showing me that sometimes the best discoveries happen right here on Earth. The light turned green, and Kelly drove on, her heart full of stardust and possibility. Sometimes, she realized, the bravest exploration wasn't into space at all. It was into the uncharted territory of opening your heart again. Ricardo sat in his office at the community center, staring at the grant proposal on his computer screen without really seeing it. Instead, his mind kept drifting to the previous evening, to Kelly's laugh in his kitchen, to the way Sophie's eyes lit up when she talked about space with someone who understood her passion, to the moment on the porch when saying goodbye had felt like the hardest thing in the world. A knock on his doorframe pulled him back to reality. Mr. Rivers, the budget meeting started 5 minutes ago. Right. Thanks, Denise. He stood, grabbing his folder of financial reports. The center's funding was tight this quarter, and they needed every dollar they could get for the new children's programs. But as he walked to the conference room, his phone buzzed with a text from Kelly. Passed a space-themed cafe on my way to work. Made me think of our favorite astronaut. How are her numbers this morning? His heart shouldn't skip at a simple text about Sophie's medical care. He shouldn't smile at the way Kelly said, our favorite astronaut. He shouldn't. Earth to Ricardo. His colleague, Michael, waved from the conference table. Are you planning to join us in this galaxy? Ricardo slid into his seat, trying to focus on spreadsheets and budget allocations. But his mind kept wandering to the way Kelly had looked in his kitchen, seamlessly fitting into their little world, as if she'd always been there. Across town, Kelly was having similar difficulties concentrating. She stood at the nurse's station, updating patient charts, when Natalie appeared with 2 cups of coffee. Okay, spill, Natalie demanded, sliding 1 cup toward her. You've been floating around here all morning with this look on your face. What look? Kelly accepted the coffee, grateful for the caffeine boost after another long night shift. Like you've just discovered a new constellation. Natalie lowered her voice. This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain single dad, would it? Kelly busied herself with her charts. I had dinner with them. Just a thank you meal. Sophie wanted to show me her space projects. And nothing. He's a former patient's father. It wouldn't be appropriate. Sophie's not your patient anymore, Natalie pointed out. And from what I hear, Dr. Patterson is handling her care beautifully. So what's really holding you back? Before Kelly could answer, her pager buzzed. Emergency, in room 307. She hurried off, secretly relieved to escape Natalie's knowing looks. But as she handled the crisis, a frightened child having an asthma attack, she couldn't help thinking about Sophie's brave smile during blood sugar checks, about Ricardo's gentle way of turning medical routines into games. Later that afternoon, Ricardo faced his own interrogation. Margot had stopped by the community center with lunch and questions. So, she began, unpacking sandwiches in his office. Have you called her today? Mom. What? A mother can't be interested in her son's happiness. She sat down, fixing him with that penetrating look he'd known all his life. I saw how you looked at her during dinner. I don't look at her any way. But even as he said it, Ricardo knew it was a lie. He looked at Kelly the way a man dying of thirst looks at water, with longing, fear, and desperate hope all mixed together. Ricardo Allen Rivers. Margot's voice softened. Lisa would want you to be happy. The sound of his late wife's name made his chest tight. Sophie needs stability. She needs me focused on her health, her future. I can't just what? Care about someone? Let someone care about you. Margot reached across the desk, squeezing his hand. Love isn't a limited resource, son. Your heart can grow to hold more without letting go of what's already there. As if on cue, his phone lit up with another text from Kelly. This time it was a photo, a child's drawing from one of her patients, showing a rocket ship that looked suspiciously like Sophie's artistic style. Looks like someone's starting a trend in the pediatric ward, Kelly's message read. Space medicine is catching on. Ricardo found himself smiling, despite his inner turmoil. He started typing a response, then stopped, then started again. How did you tell someone they were becoming as essential as oxygen while simultaneously being terrified of needing them too much? The afternoon brought more challenges. Sophie's school called. Her blood sugar had dropped during PE class. She was fine, but scared. Ricardo rushed to pick her up, his heart pounding until he saw her sitting in the nurse's office, pale but smiling. I remembered what Dr. Kelly said. Sophie told him as he checked her levels. About being brave like an astronaut during emergencies. Without thinking, he texted Kelly about the incident. Her response came quickly. Give our brave astronaut a hug from me. Want me to bring over some sugar-free popsicles later? They're approved for space travel. The offer made his throat tight. It would be so easy to say yes, to let Kelly bring comfort not just to Sophie, but to him. To admit that somehow, in the space of a few weeks, she'd become someone they both looked for in times of stress and joy alike. But the weight of responsibility pressed down on him. Sophie's medical needs, the community center's struggling budget, the memory of Lisa, the fear of losing someone else he loved. The word echoed in his mind like a warning bell. When had that happened? How had he let Kelly slip past his carefully constructed walls? Daddy? Sophie's voice pulled him back. Can Dr. Kelly come over? She knows the best space stories for when I'm scared. Ricardo looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Past the medical concerns and daily worries, he saw what she saw, the possibility of more love, more joy, more family, the simple wisdom of a child who hadn't yet learned to fear happiness. His fingers moved over his phone. Popsicles would be great. Sophie could use some space medicine right now. At the hospital, Kelly stared at his response, her heart racing. She should maintain professional distance, should focus on her career, should remember all the reasons why getting involved with the former patient's family was complicated. Instead, she found herself stopping at the store after her shift, carefully selecting popsicles and, on impulse, a small stuffed astronaut bear, because sometimes the heart knew better than the head what was right. As she drove toward the Rivers' home, Kelly thought about her mother's favorite saying, "Baby, sometimes the scariest steps are the ones that lead you exactly where you need to be." She was terrified of caring too much, of not caring enough, of stepping into a family's life and changing its orbit forever. But as she pulled into their driveway, seeing Sophie's face light up in the window, seeing Ricardo standing in the doorway with that look that made her knees weak, Kelly realized something. Some things were worth being scared for. Some people were worth the risk of falling. Some loves came into your life like distant stars, seemingly small at first, until you realized they were actually suns, capable of warming entire worlds. "Dr. Kelly," Sophie called from the door. "Did you bring space snacks?" Kelly grabbed her bags, smiling. "Even better. I brought a space friend who really wants to meet the bravest astronaut in Atlanta." Ricardo's eyes met hers over Sophie's head, and in that moment, they both knew. Whatever this was between them, this fragile, beautiful, terrifying thing, it was already too late to stop it. Their hearts had called out to each other across the vast space of their fears and doubts, and somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, they had heard each other's answer. The emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos as Kelly rushed through the sliding doors, still wearing her casual clothes from her day off. The text from Ricardo had been brief, but terrifying. "Sophie's blood sugar won't stabilize. At Atlanta Metro ER. She found them in Curtain Bay 3. Sophie curled up on the hospital bed, Ricardo holding her hand, his face ashen. A junior resident Kelly didn't recognize was reviewing Sophie's charts. "I'm Dr. Ellis," she announced. Dr. Mode taking over despite her unofficial status. "I'm familiar with Sophie's case." The resident looked up, relieved. "Dr. Ellis, the patient's blood glucose has been resistant to correction. We've administered—" "Kelly," Sophie's weak voice interrupted. "You came." "Of course I did, brave astronaut." Kelly moved to the bedside, professional assessment warring with personal concern. "Want to tell me what happened?" Ricardo's voice was rough. Everything was fine at dinner. Normal readings. Then at bedtime, he ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I should have noticed something was off earlier." "It's not your fault," Kelly said firmly, reading Sophie's charts. "Sometimes these episodes just happen." But internally, her mind raced through possibilities. "Sophie, sweetie, did you try any new foods today?" Sophie nodded weakly. At Maddie's birthday party, her mum said the cake was sugar-free. Understanding dawned on Kelly's face. Did it taste different than usual sugar-free treats? Another nod. "Kind of weird, but I didn't want to be rude." Kelly turned to the resident. "Check for hidden sugars, possibly alternative sweeteners her system isn't used to, and let's get a more detailed metabolic panel." Hours passed in a blur of tests and treatments. Kelly stayed, navigating the delicate line between medical professional and whatever she was becoming to this family. She explained procedures to Ricardo in terms he could understand, distracted Sophie with space stories during blood draws, and gently corrected the resident's approach when needed. Dawn was breaking when Sophie's numbers finally stabilized. The little girl had fallen asleep, her color returning to normal, her breathing steady. Ricardo stood by the window, staring out at the emerging day. "You should get some rest," Kelly said softly, joining him. "They'll keep her for observation, but she's stable now." "I can't leave her." His voice cracked. "I can't." "Hey!" Kelly touched his arm. "She's okay. You're okay." Ricardo turned to her, his green eyes swimming with unshed tears. "Lisa died in a hospital at dawn." The words came out raw. There was nothing they could do. "I just had to watch and I can't do it again, Kelly. I can't lose—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of it hung between them. "I can't lose someone else I love. I can't lose you." "Ricardo," Kelly started, but was interrupted by her pager. Another emergency. Another child who needed her. the professional clash with the personal hitting her like a physical blow. "Go," he said, understanding in his eyes. "It's your job." "I'll come back," she promised, squeezing his hand. But as she hurried to answer the page, Kelly felt the full impact of what they were risking. Her career, her professional boundaries, her heart, all tangled up in this family that had somehow become essential to her existence. Later that morning, during shift change, Natalie found Kelly in the doctor's lounge, staring into a cold cup of coffee. "I heard about Sophie," her friend said gently, "and about you rushing in while off duty. I had to come." Kelly's voice was barely a whisper. "But maybe that's the problem. I can't be objective anymore. When I saw her in that ER bed—" "You cared," Natalie finished, "like a human being, not just a doctor." "It's more than that." Kelly finally looked up. "When he told me about Lisa, about losing her in a hospital at dawn, Nat, I wanted to promise him it would never happen again. But how can I? I see death here every day. I lose patience. I have to maintain professional distance to function. Is that what you're really afraid of? Losing professional distance? Or is it about letting yourself need someone as much as they need you?" Before Kelly could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Margot. "He needs you. Not just as a doctor. Please don't let fear win." The words hit home. Kelly remembered her own father's voice from years ago, when she'd been afraid to apply to medical school. "Baby girl, the biggest risks often lead to the greatest healing." She made her decision. Walking back into Sophie's room, Kelly found Ricardo asleep in the visitor's chair, his hand still holding his daughter's. Sophie was awake, quietly drawing on a pad the nurses had brought her. "Hey, Space Cadet," Kelly whispered. "What are you creating?" Sophie held up her drawing. It showed 3 figures holding hands inside a heart-shaped space station. "It's us," she said simply, "because Daddy's scared, but he's less scared when you're here, and I'm less scared too." Kelly felt tears prick her eyes. "Can I tell you a secret, Sophie? Sometimes grown-ups get scared because they love people so much." "That's silly," Sophie declared. "Love should make you brave, like astronauts." Out of the mouths of babes, Kelly thought. She looked at Ricardo's sleeping face, at the worry lines that even rest couldn't smooth away, at the way he'd organized Sophie's medical supplies on the bedside table, always prepared, always caring, always protecting. Maybe Sophie was right. Maybe love should make you brave, brave enough to risk your heart, brave enough to embrace joy, even knowing that life offered no guarantees. Ricardo stirred, his eyes finding Kelly's immediately. "You came back." "Always will," she said, and meant it. The morning sun painted the room in shades of gold, so different from the harsh fluorescent lights of night. Sophie worked on her drawing, humming softly. Ricardo's hand found Kelly's, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'm scared too," Kelly admitted quietly, "of caring this much, of not being able to fix everything, of losing—" "Me too." Ricardo's thumb traced patterns on her palm. "But Sophie told me something wise earlier. She said that astronauts have to trust their team, that nobody explores space alone." Kelly smiled through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Smart kid." "Smart like her mum," Ricardo said softly. "Lisa would have liked you. She always said love was about building bridges, not walls." In the bed, Sophie held up her finished drawing triumphantly. "Said, look, I added stars all around us, because Daddy says home is where your heart feels safe and stars make everything safer." Kelly looked at the picture, at this child's vision of love and family, drawn in crayon and hope, at Ricardo's tired but tender smile, at their joined hands, bridging the space between professional and personal, between loss and love, between fear and faith. "You know what?" she said. "I think the stars have the right idea. Everything looks clearer when you're brave enough to shine." 3 weeks after Sophie's emergency room visit, Kelly stood in her apartment, staring at her closet with uncharacteristic indecision. The community center was hosting a family science night, and Ricardo had asked her to help run the health education booth. "Just as a medical expert," he'd said, but his eyes had told a different story. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ricardo. "Sophie's insisting on wearing her NASA shirt to help set up. Says we need to look professional for the space medicine demonstration." Kelly smiled, finally selecting a casual blue dress that could work for both education and whatever this evening might become. She'd been spending more time with the Rivers family since that night in the hospital. Movie nights, weekend trips to the science museum, quiet dinners after Sophie's bedtime, where she and Ricardo talked about everything and nothing. The community center bustled with activity when she arrived. Children darted between makeshift display tables, while parents helped set up exhibits. She spotted Ricardo directing traffic, sleeves rolled up, his coordinator mode in full swing. "Dr. Kelly," Sophie's voice rang out across the room. She ran over, her NASA shirt slightly too big, likely a hand-me-down. "Come see our booth. I made all the signs myself." The health education booth had been transformed into Space Medicine Station, complete with hand-drawn astronauts and medical symbols. Construction paper stars hung from the ceiling, and a poster board explained basic health concepts using space metaphors. "The human body is like a spacecraft," Sophie explained proudly, pointing to her drawings. "It needs the right fuel and regular maintenance checks." "That's actually a brilliant way to explain it," Kelly said, genuinely impressed. She turned to Ricardo. This was Sophie's idea. He nodded, pride evident in his smile. She remembered how you explained her diabetes care using space references. Thought other kids might understand health better the same way. Kelly, Denise, Ricardo's colleague, approached with a clipboard. "Thank goodness you're here. We've got 20 kids signed up for the first aid demonstration, and Ricardo says you're the expert." The evening flew by in a whirlwind of enthusiasm and learning. Kelly taught basic first aid using space survival scenarios, while Sophie assisted by handing out astronaut badges to kids who mastered each skill. Ricardo moved between groups, but she felt his eyes on her constantly, saw his smile when she made the children laugh. During a quiet moment, he brought her a cup of water. "You're amazing with them," he said softly. "Just the way you make everything both fun and meaningful. I had a good teacher." She nodded towards Sophie, who was earnestly explaining the importance of hand-washing to a group of younger kids. "She's the one who showed me how to make medicine less scary." Ricardo's hand brushed hers as he took the empty cup. "You've changed our lives, you know. Both of ours." Before Kelly could respond, a commotion broke out near the robotics display. They sprung into action, Kelly checking on a child who'd bumped his head, Ricardo calming worried parents, both moving in sync as if they'd been partners for years. Later, as they cleaned up after the event, Sophie fell asleep on a stack of yoga mats in the corner. Ricardo draped his jacket over her, then joined Kelly in taking down the space medicine displays. "Move in with us," he said suddenly, then looked startled by his own words. Kelly froze, a paper star hanging forgotten in her hand. "What?" Ricardo ran a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about it. A lot. You're at our place most evenings anyway. Your lease is up next month. You mentioned that last week. And Sophie, she lights up every time you walk through the door. We both do." "Ricardo," Kelly's heart raced. "It's a huge step. Sophie's still adjusting to all the changes in her life, and your job here and my hospital schedule." "I know." He stepped closer, taking her hands. "I know all the logical reasons why we should wait, but I also know that every morning I wake up thinking about you, and every night I wish you were there for one more bedtime story, one more good-night kiss. I know that Sophie asks if you'll be home for dinner like it's the most natural question in the world. I know that when I picture our future, you're always in it. What about Lisa?" Kelly asked gently. "Her memory, her space in your lives. Lisa will always be Sophie's mother, always be part of our story." Ricardo's voice was soft but sure. "But she taught me that love grows, that family can expand, that hearts don't have limited space. They just make room for more love. Like the universe," came a sleepy voice from the corner. Sophie sat up, Ricardo's jacket sliding off her shoulders. "It's always getting bigger." Kelly laughed through sudden tears. "How long have you been awake, little astronaut?" "Long enough." Sophie padded over, wrapping her arms around Kelly's waist. "Please say yes. We can turn the office into your space station, and you can help me with science homework. And make pancakes with us on Sundays." Kelly looked at them both, this father and daughter who had somehow become the center of her universe. She thought about her apartment, filled with medical textbooks and takeout menus, so different from the warm chaos of the Rivers home. Thought about mornings rushed and evenings lonely, compared to sticky breakfast kisses and bedtime stories. "My shifts are crazy," she said. "Sometimes I'll be gone for 24 hours. We know." Ricardo smiled. "We'll keep your coffee fresh. I'm not always easy to live with. I get stressed about cases. Bring work home. We'll give you space when you need it." His eyes twinkled. "Astronauts need quiet time too." I snore. "Daddy does too." Sophie giggled. "You can snore together." Kelly looked around the community center, at the paper stars and medical diagrams, at the place where this unlikely family had first started to form. at Sophie's hopeful face and Ricardo's steady gaze. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes," Sophie squealed, launching into an impromptu dance. Ricardo pulled Kelly close, his kiss tasting of promise and possibility. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "I both of us do. I love you too." Kelly held them both, feeling pieces of her life clicking into place, my favorite earthbound stars. Later that night, as they drove home, Kelly thought wonderingly, Sophie chatted about room decorations and shared spaces, but it was Ricardo's quiet "welcome home" as they pulled into the driveway that made it real. Kelly looked at the small house with its chalk-decorated porch and Sophie's telescope in the window. At the garden they'd planted together, and the wind chimes Lisa's mother had given them. At all the ways love could build a family, one small step at a time. "Race you inside," Sophie called, already running for the door. "Last one in has to make hot chocolate." Ricardo squeezed Kelly's hand. "Ready for this adventure?" Kelly squeezed back. "With my favorite crew. Always." The first light of dawn filtered through unfamiliar curtains as Kelly blinked awake, momentarily disoriented. Then she felt Ricardo's steady breathing beside her, heard the soft whir of Sophie's nightlight in the next room, and remembered this was home now. Her clothes hung next to Ricardo's in the closet. Her medical journals shared shelf space with Sophie's space books, and her coffee mug had found its place in the morning routine. But living together wasn't all romantic moments and family breakfasts. Reality had crept in during the past 2 weeks, bringing with it the challenges of merging two independent lives into one shared space. Kelly's pager buzzed, a sound Ricardo was still adjusting to at odd hours. She slipped out of bed quietly, but he stirred anyway. "Emergency," he mumbled, reaching for her hand. "Probably I'll text you." She kissed him softly. Go back to sleep." In the hallway, she nearly tripped over Sophie's telescope, recently relocated from her room to better see the stars, or so she claimed. Kelly suspected it had more to do with watching for her return on late nights. The hospital was chaos when she arrived. A multi-car accident had brought in several pediatric traumas, and Kelly lost herself in the work, the focused intensity that had defined her life before the Rivers family. Hours blurred together, until Natalie appeared with coffee and a knowing look. "Rough morning to be called in early," her friend commented. "Wasn't this supposed to be your day to help with Sophie's science project?" Kelly's heart sank. The lunar phase diorama. She'd promised to help before school. Checking her phone, she found messages from both Rivers. Sophie. "It's okay, Dr. Kelly. Daddy helped me finish. But I saved you some space rocks to paint." Ricardo. "She understands. We both do. Stay safe. Love you." The messages warmed her heart, but also twisted something inside her. They did understand. They were almost too understanding. Sometimes she wondered if they were trying so hard to accommodate her schedule that they weren't expressing their real feelings. That evening, she came home to find Sophie and Ricardo in the kitchen, surrounded by what appeared to be the aftermath of a baking experiment gone wrong. "We tried to make galaxy cookies," Sophie announced, her face streaked with purple food coloring. "They're a little creative. That's one word for it," Ricardo laughed, holding up what might have once been a star-shaped cookie, now resembling more of a cosmic blob. "We thought you might need cheering up after your rough day." Kelly felt tears prick her eyes. "You didn't have to. We wanted to," Ricardo said simply, pulling her into a flower-dusted embrace. "Besides, Sophie has a theory about failed cookies. They taste better," Sophie declared, "because they're unique, like shooting stars." Later, after Sophie was in bed, Kelly and Ricardo sat on the porch swing, sharing the last of the cosmic cookies. The night air was warm, filled with cricket song and the distant hum of the city. "I'm sorry about this morning," Kelly began, but Ricardo shook his head. "Don't. You're a doctor. We knew what that meant when we asked you to move in." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But maybe we could talk about finding some balance, not for the emergencies. Those are non-negotiable, but for the regular stuff." Kelly tensed. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he took her hand, tracing the lines of her palm. "Maybe we could set aside one evening a week that's just for us. Barring emergencies, of course. Mom's already offered to take Sophie regularly, and maybe one morning a week for family breakfast, even if it has to be at 5 a.m. before your shift. You'd do that. Get up that early just for breakfast." "Kelly," his voice was soft but serious. "We'd do a lot more than that to have you in our lives, but we need to find rhythms that work for all of us. Sophie misses you, not in a bad way, but in a saving things to tell you way. And You what? I worry that you're stretching yourself too thin trying to be perfect at everything. Perfect doctor, perfect partner, perfect, whatever we're calling this role, with Sophie. The words hit home. Kelly had been trying so hard to prove she could handle it all, her career, their relationship, Sophie's needs, that she hadn't noticed how exhausted she was becoming. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared of letting everyone down. The hospital and you, Sophie? Scared that if I can't do it all perfectly, you'll realize this was a mistake. Ricardo pulled her closer. The only mistake would be pretending we don't need to work on this together. Remember what Sophie says about astronauts. They have to trust their team. Kelly smiled, remembering, because nobody explores space alone. Exactly. He kissed her temple. So let's be a team. Figure out our mission parameters, set our course, make adjustments when needed. Inside, Sophie's nightlight cast star-shaped shadows on the hallway wall. Kelly watched them dance, thinking about teams and trust and the courage to be imperfect. Okay, she said finally. Let's start with weekly family breakfast. Tuesday mornings. I can usually swap shifts to start later. Tuesday mornings it is. Ricardo smiled. Sophie will be thrilled. She's been wanting to show you her new pancake design, something about constellations made of blueberries. And evening dates? Thursday nights. Mum's bridge club meets Wednesday, but she said Thursday would be perfect for regular Sophie time. They began planning, adjusting their personal orbits to create something sustainable. Kelly felt tension she hadn't even recognized begin to ease. This was what family meant. Not perfection, but dedication. Not flawless execution, but constant loving effort. A shooting star streaked across the sky and they both made silent wishes. Kelly's was simple, for the wisdom to navigate this new life with grace, the strength to be present even when tired, and the courage to let love guide her home even on the darkest nights. What did you wish for? She asked Ricardo. He smiled, pulling her closer on the swing. Can't tell, but I think it's already coming true. Inside, Sophie's telescope stood sentinel in the hallway, its lens pointing toward the future they were building together. On its base, barely visible in the dim light, she'd taped a new sign, Our Family Observatory. Kelly traced the words with her finger, feeling their weight and promise. Some observations required precision instruments, like the telescope or her medical equipment. But the most important things, love, family, belonging, those you could see with your heart. Come to bed, Ricardo asked, holding out his hand. Kelly took it, ready to face whatever adjustments tomorrow might bring, because that's what families did. They adjusted, adapted, and kept loving through all the phases of life's moon. 6 months after Kelly moved in, the river's backyard had transformed into a celebration of love and family. Paper lanterns shaped like stars hung from trees, casting a warm glow over gathered friends and family. A small arch, decorated with twinkling lights and astronomy charts, stood ready for the ceremony that would officially unite them, though in their hearts they'd been a family for months. Kelly stood at Sophie's bedroom window, watching guests arrive. Her simple white dress caught the evening light, elegant but practical enough for dancing with a certain 5-year-old who'd insisted on being both flower girl and junior astronaut of honor. Ready, baby? Her father asked from the doorway. In his bus driver's uniform, he'd insisted on driving one last route before the ceremony. He looked both proud and nervous. Almost. Kelly adjusted her pearl earrings, the same ones she'd worn to the farmer's market that fateful day. Is Sophie? Running mission control with your mother in the kitchen, he smiled. That child's got everything organized down to the minute. Says timing is crucial for optimal star viewing conditions. Kelly laughed, thinking of the careful schedule Sophie had drawn up, complete with stick figure illustrations and precise times for each event. Some things had changed over the months. Sophie now called her Mom Kelly when she was excited, but her attention to detail remained constant. In the kitchen, she found her mother and Sophie putting final touches on the cake. Its dark blue frosting held carefully placed sugar stars, forming actual constellations. Mom Kelly, Sophie bounced over, her special dress, decorated with glow-in-the-dark constellations, twirling. Look, we got all the stars in exactly the right places, and Daddy says we can use the telescope later to find them for real. Kelly knelt, careful of her dress, to hug her soon-to-be official stepdaughter. It's perfect, my brave astronaut. Everything's perfect. Almost everything, her mother corrected with a smile. You still need your something borrowed. She held out a delicate silver bracelet. Your father gave me this on our wedding day. It's seen 30 years of love and counting. As her mother fastened the bracelet, Kelly caught sight of Margot through the window, arranging flowers with tears in her eyes. The older woman had become like a second mother, her initial matchmaking instincts proven right in ways none of them could have imagined. The back door opened, and Natalie poked her head in. It's time. Everyone's ready, and Ricardo's about to wear a hole in the grass pacing. Sophie took Kelly's hand. Don't be nervous, Mom Kelly. Daddy says when you find your home among the stars, everything else falls into place. When did you get so wise, little one? I've always been wise, Sophie declared. I knew you were our missing piece as soon as you knew about space medicine. The ceremony itself was simple but meaningful. Ricardo waited under the arch, his green eyes bright with tears when Kelly appeared. Sophie stood between them, holding both their hands as they exchanged vows. Kelly. Ricardo's voice was steady despite his tears. You entered our lives like a shooting star. Bright, unexpected, and exactly what we needed. You didn't just help us heal. You showed us how to reach for new dreams. With you, our family isn't defined by what we've lost, but by how much love we've found. Kelly squeezed Sophie's hand, drawing strength from her presence. Ricardo, Sophie, you taught me that the greatest discoveries aren't made in hospitals or laboratories, but in the quiet moments of everyday love. You're my home, my constellation, my reason for believing in magic and medicine in equal measure. Sophie tugged on their hands. Can I say something too? The officiant nodded, smiling, and Sophie turned to face the gathered guests with all the seriousness a 5-year-old could muster. When my first mom went to heaven, Daddy said she became a star watching over us, but he was sad a lot, and I was scared sometimes because my body doesn't work like other kids. Then we met Mom Kelly, and she knew about space and medicine, and she made us both smile again. And now we're a whole family, like the whole solar system instead of just planets floating around. There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. Kelly knelt to hug Sophie, not caring about her dress anymore. We love you so much, brave girl. The reception was a blend of elegance and whimsy. Tables featured centerpieces of books, medical texts and astronomy guides arranged with flowers. The dance floor lights mimicked starlight, and instead of a traditional first dance song, they swayed to David Bowie's Space Oddity at Sophie's insistence. As evening deepened, Ricardo set up Sophie's telescope. Children and adults alike took turns viewing the real stars while enjoying cosmic-themed desserts. Kelly found herself surrounded by love in all its forms, her parents dancing with Sophie, Margot sharing stories with Natalie, Ricardo's community center colleagues mingling with her hospital team. Penny, for your thoughts, Mrs. Rivers. Ricardo's arms slipped around her waist. Just thinking about orbits. She leaned back against him. How the right gravitational pull can create something beautiful and lasting. Mom, Kelly, Daddy, Sophie called from the telescope. Come quick, I found it. They joined her at the telescope, where she proudly pointed out a particular star. That's the one I wished on, she announced. The night you came to dinner with the space popsicles. I wished we could be a forever family. Ricardo lifted Sophie into his arms. Looks like that star has good hearing. Actually, Sophie said matter-of-factly, I think it was just science. Like when elements come together to make something new and better. Chemistry and astronomy both? Kelly laughed. You're going to be unstoppable, little astronaut. Later, as the party wound down, they found themselves back under the arch. Sophie had fallen asleep in Margot's lap, her new junior astronaut badge still clutched in her hand. The paper stars swayed gently in the breeze, and distant sirens reminded Kelly that the world continued turning. There would still be emergencies, challenging days, moments of doubt, but there would also be this: morning kisses tasting of coffee, bedtime stories about brave astronauts, family dinners where love and laughter were always on the menu. There would be Sophie's medical victories and setbacks, all faced together, Ricardo's quiet strength and endless patience. Kelly's gradually learning that being perfect mattered less than being present. What are you thinking? Ricardo asked softly. That some things really are written in the stars. Kelly touched her new wedding ring, a unique design featuring a small diamond surrounded by tiny stars. Even if we have to write them ourselves sometimes. With help, he reminded her, nodding toward their sleeping daughter. Ty, our very own mission specialist. Speaking of missions, Kelly smiled. I have a surprise for both of you. I was going to wait, but... She took his hand, placing it on her stomach. Houston, we might have a situation developing, due for launch in about 7 months. Ricardo's eyes widened. Going to need to adjust the observatory schedule, she finished. Darcy thinks Sophie would mind sharing her space expertise with a co-pilot. His answer was a kiss that felt like coming home and beginning an adventure all at once. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient paths, witnessing this moment as they had witnessed the first time Kelly helped a lost grandmother in an airport, the first family dinner, the first admission of love. Some might call it chance, or fate, or simply the natural orbit of hearts meant to find each other. But as Kelly and Ricardo held each other under the starlit sky, they knew what Sophie had known all along, that love, like space itself, was infinite in its capacity to expand, to welcome, to create new constellations of belonging. Their story wasn't ending, it was evolving, growing, reaching for new horizons, because that's what families did. They explored together, charted new territories of the heart, and always found their way home to each other. In the gentle night, surrounded by paper stars and real ones, they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, under the vast sky, writing their own story in the endless book of love and stars. 1 year later, the nursery's nightlight cast familiar constellations across freshly painted walls. Kelly rocked 3-month-old Luna Grace Rivers, while Sophie, now 6.5, the half being very important, she insisted, gave her baby sister a detailed lecture about the phases of the moon. "And that's why you're named Luna," Sophie explained, perched on the window seat beside her telescope, "because you were born during a full moon, and Mom Kelly was in labor for exactly 1 lunar day, and maybe let your sister sleep, Space Commander," Ricardo said softly from the doorway. "She'll have plenty of time for astronomy lessons tomorrow." "But she likes it," Sophie protested, though she lowered her voice. "See? She smiles when I talk about stars." Kelly smiled, watching Luna's tiny fingers curl around her sister's offered hand. The baby did seem fascinated by Sophie's voice, just as she was captivated by the star projector that had become a crucial part of their bedtime routine. "Your sister's right, though," Kelly whispered, as Luna's eyes finally drifted closed. "You do love space talk, just like her." Carefully, she laid Luna in her crib, decorated with hand-painted constellations, a joint project by Sophie and Ricardo during Kelly's last trimester. The mobile above was new, a gift from Margot featuring tiny astronauts and silver stars. Sophie watched the baby sleep, her face thoughtful. "Do you think my first mom would be happy about our bigger family?" Ricardo lifted Sophie into his arms, though she was getting almost too big for it. "What do you think?" "I think," Sophie adjusted her glasses, a habit she'd picked up from years of careful consideration. "I think she'd be happy, because now we have more love, not less, like how adding stars makes the sky brighter." "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Kelly said, her heart full and very wise. Later, after Sophie was tucked into her own bed, now decorated with more sophisticated space posters, reflecting her growing interests, Kelly and Ricardo stood in the nursery doorway, watching their youngest sleep. "Hard to believe it's been 2 years since you helped my mother in that airport," Ricardo murmured, pulling Kelly close. "The best detour I ever took." She leaned into him, remembering, "Though I think Sophie's theory about gravitational forces pulling us together might have some merit." From down the hall came Sophie's voice. "I can't sleep. Can we look at the meteor shower, please? It's a special celestial event." They shared a knowing look. Some things hadn't changed, and hopefully never would. 20 minutes, Kelly called back. "And you have to wear your warm jacket." The 3 of them ended up in the backyard, Luna secured in her carrier, sleeping peacefully against Kelly's chest. Sophie set up her telescope with practiced ease while explaining the difference between meteors and meteorites to her baby sister. As shooting stars streaked across the sky, Kelly looked at her family, at Ricardo's gentle smile, at Sophie's endless enthusiasm, at Luna's peaceful face, at all the ways love could expand and grow, creating its own kind of infinity. "Hey," Sophie whispered, eyes still on the sky. "I just realized something. We're kind of like a meteor shower ourselves." "How so?" Ricardo asked. "Well, we all came from different places, like meteors from different parts of space, but we made something beautiful when we came together." She nodded, satisfied with her analogy. "And now we're a constellation. The best kind," Kelly agreed, kissing Luna's downy head. "The kind that keeps growing brighter." Above them, the stars continued their ancient dance, witnessing this family that had found each other across time and space and circumstance. In the distance, a siren wailed, Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own emergencies and triumphs. But for now, they had this, a warm summer night, a sky full of falling stars, and 4 hearts beating in perfect harmony, their own private universe, expanding with every moment of love. "Make a wish," Sophie called, as another meteor blazed across the sky, but Kelly just smiled, holding her family close. Everything she could wish for was already right here, written in the stars that had guided them home to each other. The end, based on the emotional journey of Kelly, Ricardo, and Sophie, here is an impactful question. If love is like the universe, infinite and ever-expanding, what was the moment in the story that touched your heart the most? Was it when Kelly helped Margot at the airport without knowing that this act of kindness would change her life? When Sophie drew her perfect family before it even existed? Or perhaps when Ricardo finally found the courage to open his heart again, showing that love has no limits, only new horizons to explore? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.